Welcome to the Creative Tools Podcast. My name is Ashay, and I'm immensely passionate about using technology for creativity. On this podcast, I talk to various creators about what tools and technology they use to be creative. My guest today is Gail Wagner. Gail is an accomplished and award-winning actor, director, and costumer for both on the stage and film. Gail's feature film directing and producing debut, The Reprogramming of Jeremy, was completed in 2018 and garnered several international film festival awards. Gail is currently working on a documentary about Delaware resident Roy Bernard titled Mr. Are You a Lady? Hey Gail, thanks a lot for visiting my podcast.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I'm really super happy to be here and talk to you again.
Yes. So let's dive right in. My first question is, what do you create?
I create theater and stage plays and murder mysteries and staged readings. So a little bit of anytime you have the audience present.
So would it be correct to say that your creations have always been physical in the presence of audience and not
For
digital?
For the stage, yes. When
Yeah,
we're doing that, yes. The audience is present, no matter
Okay.
whether it's the stage or a murder mystery or a reading. Yes.
Great. So I wanted to talk to you about the tools and technology that you use in making these creations. And I want to section this interview into three parts. You have been filmmaker as well, so you know like pre-production, production, post-production. So it's
Yes.
very, very similar. What I want to talk about here, what happens before the creation, what happens during the creation, and what happens after the creation. So let's talk about the pre-creation part. So my specific question to you is, how do you record and how do you retrieve the inspiration that you receive for your creations?
So for my creations, it really does come down to the story. What is the story that's being told for the play or whatever it is that we're doing? Mostly what I'm going to talk about is probably more of a play that's staged on the stage. So it's looking at that story, because if it is an original work, we may be able to talk to the writer. If it's not an original work, then it's up to a certain amount of interpretation. So we get that, we read it. And for me, I also do research depending on the time period or the characters in it. And I may look at maybe what other people have done and what I want to do different.
So these plays, the scripts of these plays, how do you my question is, how do you keep track of, like, let's say you come upon a script and you probably are not going to make it into a play right at that instant, but so you want to preserve it so that you could make it maybe in future. How do you make sure to keep a record of what you have come across?
So most of the plays are in hard script form. So we actually purchase those from a publishing house, unless it is something someone has emailed to me, and then I'll keep it on my computer and I can go back to it. But most plays, you must buy a copy of the script from the publishing house to review it. And then I've kept those, and I'll keep those on a bookshelf and I'll go back and look at those. If it is something that I digitally download, then I keep it on my computer and I might separate it by the type of play that it is.
So this activity of procuring the script for the play, is it based on, okay, there is this season now and you have to now create or direct a play, then you go back and then you go and buy it, or you buy it irrespective of whether you are going to make it into a play or not?
I have bought lots of plays to read to decide whether or not I want to direct them or I want to submit them to a theater to be able to stage it. So you can go through the publishing catalog. You'll get emails that this is a new play that's being written, and then sometimes it might be you might have a good rapport with the playwright, and he'll say, "I have a new play. Would you like to read it?" Or I have a play that's not published yet. So getting a hold of a play that's not published and being the first person to do it is kind of exciting as
Hmm.
well.
But I'm still not understanding how you keep track of this. Like, for example,
Uh,
if you have these plays that you have bought, scripts that you have bought, and they are on your bookshelf, do you tag them? How do you organize them? So
I don't tag them. I don't tag them. And if you came to my house, you would probably see them all over the place. Seriously, because they are all over. And then some of them I donate to like the theater, or I leave them at the theater, or there's other people that we pass them around to. Honestly, most of it is down to memory. I read a script once, I liked it, and so I might have someone else read it, and they'll say, "Oh, I like that," but there isn't a cataloging of it. It's not like you may keep a personal library,
hmm.
but most of it is honestly it's memory.
And then let's talk about your directing aspect of it. So since you direct plays, you must be watching a lot of plays too. So then while you are watching something, if you find something inspiring and then you would want to keep a record of it, how do you keep a record of
Well,
that?
you can most of the time when you go in to watch a play, you may not record. It is part of the royalties that it's
No, no,
part
I'm not.
of
I'm
the
not
bringing.
saying. I'm not saying with recording with a video.
Oh, okay.
I'm.
You're talking about how to
I'm
remember it.
how to remember. Yeah.
Yep. Again, a lot of that is memory too, because maybe I went and saw a play at another theater and I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, I really like that play, but I would do this and this and this different. And maybe it was in a different state, so, or a different area. So maybe I could stage it here because it would be attractive to what our normal audience is.
Hmm.
And and then somebody else can take that play, another director can take that play and stage it totally different. And most of it is honestly for the stage part of it, a lot of it is memory as far as what we like, buying the script. And I do, like I said, I do have them on my computer that sometimes I'll go back and look at and I'll read them again to decide whether or not I want to submit it, whether it's a one act or a full length one.
Do you do you do any tricks of like making notes or texting it to yourself or something like that? I mean,
I email things to myself all the time. Yes, I do.
okay.
Yes, I do. And I actually, when we're in production or something and someone needs something, like last night, I'm
Hmm.
getting ready to do a staged reading of A Christmas Carol on
Hmm.
Saturday. So there was something that someone was going to bring, or they're going to do that. And I'm like, they'll say to me that I'll say, send me a text or send me an email so I remember to bring it. I may make notes too, but going through and looking at that really helps.
So has it ever happened to you that you really liked something and something was really inspiring, but you didn't make a note of it and then you lost it later?
Yes. When you go, I read this play about such and such. So then you're out on the internet and you're putting in all the keywords that you could think of. And then you'll bring it up and you'll look at it and you'll be like, you'll read it. Oh, maybe that's it. Or maybe it's this. And I actually had one that I looked for that I wanted to do. And by the time thought I could do it, it was out of print and I couldn't get it at all.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yes, that does happen.
So then, how do you cope with that? Like, do you what trick do you use to not
Well,
let that happen?
you kind of you can monitor them, but sometimes you have to let it go and go, okay, I'm going to go on to the next thing. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah, I mean, because I make films, I watch a lot of films as well, and then
Mhm.
the challenge that I always feel is I'm not necessarily making films all the time, but I'm watching everything, watching a lot of stuff all the time. So initially, I used to like see something really inspiring, and then I wanted to depend on my memory as well, but it doesn't serve me well all the time. So I made into a habit where I keep texting some myself.
So
I made
yeah,
like my own text group where I'm the only member, and then I just text to that group like this image, this thing, that thing. So somehow, I mean, at least there is a record, but that doesn't mean I will remember it. Like even
right.
the moment of inspiration hitting and the moment of actual creation could be separated by years, right?
Absolutely.
And then unless I tag it or unless I put some attach some emotion to it at that time, I won't be able to remember. So it's a
What?
huge problem for me.
Yeah. One of the things that I do for set designs, and because I do that as well as the directing, as part of my directing, I will design the set and I will
Hmm.
also do the costuming. And one of the things that I use for that is Pinterest.
Hmm.
And I'll create a group on Pinterest for just that play.
Hmm.
And as I find them, I will add them to that and I'll go back and look it over. And I'll also do that if there's a play that I'm doing that may have a certain time period, then I'll just add it to a time period. But that is one tool that I use at Pinterest to keep track of set designs or how I want to do something. So I use that actually quite often.
So what do you pin to your board in Pinterest? I mean, is it your own pictures or you find something on Pinterest and then you
You
put it
find
there?
something on Pinterest and you can put it in, and then other people can find what you have saved and they can save it to their board as well. So it's
Okay.
like having a huge bulletin board all
Hmm.
around,
Hmm.
but you can, it's like having several, because I can create a, say, like for Christmas Carol. I can create, and I have a board for Christmas Carol. And then as I find things that I like, or like you said, that inspire me, like the way I want the Ghost of Christmas Future to look like. There's some things that I found on there that I really like, and it gives me ideas on how I want that particular character to look as a puppet. And when I
Hmm.
say a puppet, I mean a big one, because I want it big and menacing. And so I pull those pictures in, and some of them can be of just a set, and some of them are sets that are beyond my theater's financial capability, but it still gives me ideas.
Hmm. Great. So now let's move on to the creation part, where you are actually directing a play. So in films, how it works is before you start directing, you are kind of have storyboarded the thing
Yep.
already in your head, and while you are storyboarding, you're basically building a prototype for your film, right? And while it is getting built in sketch in front of you, the actual film is getting built
Mm-hmm.
in your head.
Right.
And then when you actually show up on set, you can go back to your memory of that storyboard, and then you can direct actors, so you have kind of pre-visualized how you are
Mm-hmm.
going to create it. So do you do anything like a pre-viz for theater directing?
We do, for because we do a lot of pre-production in theater.
Hmm.
um, it's not just, like I said, we do the set designs, we see what's available, and that all gets laid out, and then you do the casting process the same as you would in stage, I mean in film.
Hmm.
Some of the differences between film and theater, as far as doing the production wise, is one, a lot more rehearsal for theater,
Hmm.
but also two, we tend to move more linear in a production, where in film you can say, well, I'm going to film
Yeah.
this day, you can go like this, where in theater we always go, it's pretty much a linear, unless we're working on a certain scene.
Hmm.
But there are things that I do make notes on. This is what you have in here, and we'll have props and costumes, and this is what happens in that, this is where you go, and we have the set design. I build mini sets,
Hmm.
like from doll furniture, and
Hmm.
I'll have the set and I'll move that around, and I'll use graph paper so that it's like, this is where this goes, and I make a grid of who is in what scene and what props they might, and I do a manifest of costumes and props. And by doing the scene grid, I also can make a really effective rehearsal calendar so that people aren't coming and sitting around. It's one of the things I don't like. I don't want you to come and I don't want you to sit on the side. If I call you, you're going to be used. So by doing a scene grid, I can see who's there. And if somebody only has one line, I ask them not to come so that we can just work primarily on what scene is being rehearsed that day. And that way I break it down until I start doing full acts where we run maybe act 1 and then act 2, and we start running those, then everybody's there. But by using those particular tools, I can maximize people's time and I can maximize my time of what we need to rehearse at a particular rehearsal.
So this grid that you just mentioned, what do you use to make that? Is it a physical grid like on a whiteboard or something?
It's a physical grid in, it's usually a table, or it can be like a spreadsheet. So you can use either one of those. And what I'll do is I'll have the name of the character down, and then I'll have act 1 and I'll have the scenes across the top. If there's a lot of scenes in act 1, then it'll go like 1 through 10. And then I put an X whenever they are in that particular scene. And then by just looking at who's in scene 1, who's in scene 2, I can tell who I need to call that day as well. And then I usually give that to the actors, because sometimes they're going, well, am I in that scene? Yeah, here you go. Now you know. I've done the work for you. You're in this scene.
And then let's talk about those mini sets that you just talked about, because I was talking to another theater director, and he mentioned the same thing to me. And he's like, okay, I'm built before I go and start directing, I kind of visualize it from the top, like he's like a top view of the set, and then think of it like that's one instance in time, and then you have like a z-axis where different times for that particular set is now going to be in the play. And then for those times, okay, this person is going to enter from this corner, this person is going to enter from this corner, and then that's how he gets the idea of space in his head before. So do you also follow something similar?
Absolutely, because then when I can set it like that, and it doesn't mean once you build the set that sometimes you have to make some adjustments.
Yeah.
Because in film, the person just walks out of the frame.
Right. Yeah.
And they're out. It's easy. But on the stage, we need exits. So how many exits are there? Are there doors? Are we putting a door in here? Not only that, are we building it forward so that they can pass through behind the set? Or are they passing through another way, depending on what stage you're on and how deep it is? And yes, also, how are we moving the set around for different scenes? If it's not one static set, then how do we move it around? And depending on the theater you're in, on whether your audience is raised, where the audience is up, or are you on a raised stage with a flat audience, depends on how you do it too, because how are the people going to be seen? How when the actors move, if they're doing something, if they do something and the audience can't see it, it's going to be lost on them.
And then this replica, the small scale replica of the set that you were talking about, this is a physical thing that you make, correct? Like on a graph paper with doll furniture?
Yeah, so I can do it. I've actually done it where I build the background and I'll have the walls, and then I'll cut doors in, and then I can put the furniture on. And that way too, I can visualize by moving the furniture around. And then if we go to build the set, I will draw it on graph paper, and I'll say, this is how I want it. And then we can put it together. But I know, like, our flats are 4x8. I have 2x8 flats. And if I know that, then I can kind of get an idea of what we need and where people need to come from as far as how it comes up to the curtain.
Have you used any, because this is a great opportunity to make this into some digital AR, VR kind of thing. But I mean, have you given any thought on using any digital technology for this?
I haven't for mine, but I know they do it at the professional level.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. They'll do it on the screen, and then you can kind of look at it. So yeah, what I'm using is fairly rudimentary, but it helps me visualize it where it's where like when we storyboard for film, we can look at it, we can see how the person, and so that gives your camera guy what's my shot going to be.
Yeah.
But in this helps me, like I can point at it, and I've helped other people going, well, you have this issue, or you might want this, and then they'll take it. And when we set build, or you take it to the set designer, they can say, oh yeah, we can do that. And I've done that too, going, this is what my vision is, and I've moved it around, and they're like, yeah, I can do that.
Do you know what tools they use in the professional theater, like the digital tools that you were just
I do
mentioning?
not, because I've never been privy to being in that, or been privileged, been privileged enough to be in that. But something like that, I would assume that they would use some type of tool to make it easier for them, especially depending on what theater they're going to. And if it is a traveling tour, I imagine they have to know whether their set is going to fit on the stage
Correct.
that they're going to.
Right. Wow. One fascinating thing that I realized after talking to that theater director before you was, in film, space and time both are variable, right? But in theater, time is variable, but space is constant because you are restricted to that stage.
You are
And
within the confines of that particular space. Yes.
Right. And then another thing that I just realized while talking to you right now is when you pre-viz the set, probably the same pre-visualization would have different interpretations for the set design folks, different interpretation for the actor, different interpretation for the director, but the physical thing that you are seeing is the same. Whereas in film, it is so variable because there are some things that you really can't see. Like for example, if you have like a close-up shot, then you don't really know what's going to happen around you. Plus, you have to give like some different direction to the sound person. So it is completely too many variables, I think. In film.
Well, it depends, because it's sort of the same thing when we're doing it, whether we're doing it in film, we're doing it on stage. I view it that we are painting a picture. And we are painting a picture for an audience to see. And whether it is, where you're looking through the camera, or we are backing up and we are there on the stage, because while we're there, the audience, when you're an audience in a theater, you will take out the distance between you and that stage, and you will just see that stage.
Yeah.
But we also have to worry about, like, I know when I've edited, if I didn't like something over here, I can pull that edit in a little bit. Not so much on the stage, where you have, like, if you have someone doing something, there's times I've had to say to someone, you're upstaging what's going on over here. I don't want the audience's eye to go over there. I want it to stay on the action right here. So sometimes you have to watch that. And of course, it's all live, so there isn't any retakes. So the actors have to learn not only their lines, and usually someone else's in case there's a mistake, but they have to learn how to improv if there is an issue. So that's usually a talent that they have to develop in stage, in case something happens, someone skips a line. Or I have been on a set as an actor where someone, not only did they deliver the line in the wrong act, they like skipped the whole act. And you're like looking and you're thinking, how do you get them back into the act we're supposed to be in? And one time someone started delivering lines, and there was someone on the stage that wasn't supposed to be on the stage when that particular line was delivered, but that person had jumped about 3 or 4 pages. So the person just got up and walked out of the stage. And he's supposed to run into someone else coming on, and she sees that happen, so she comes on. So, and it's always fun when one of the funniest ones was, I was on stage and I was supposed to be talking to someone who was locked in a porta potty. She had locked herself in. And I'm supposed to turn around and run right into someone. And I say my line, I turn around, the person's not there. So I turn around and I start talking again, and I turn around and she's not there. And I can't go and yell off stage, because there was a time later that I yelled so it wouldn't have made sense.
Hmm.
Someone who was behind the set realized it, ran behind the set, ran down into the green room and looked at the actress and went, "You're on." And she goes, "No, no, we haven't started. We're not, it's not." And they go, "No, no, they're at you're on," like that. And she walks up on the stage and comes out. And finally, I can turn to her and go, "Oh, Ruth Ann, am I ever glad to see you?" And she just looks at me and goes, "I bet you are."
So funny. Um, so it's really interesting to see like how the of art of theater actually gets generated in the presence of audience, whereas in film it's completely different. The art is already made, like
Yes.
like
Yep.
2 months ago. All you're doing is just showing what it has been
Yep.
recorded. So it's very interesting, like, to do these two art forms. So let's talk about now the post creation aspect. So once you have directed your play, and um, how do you um, how do you release, market, and distribute your creations?
So, so for this, what you're talking about, a lot of that marketing and all of that happens actually either pre-production or during your production, because you want to have an audience.
Right.
So you do all of that coming in, and that's how you pay for it, is to get the tickets through the door. Maybe you have sponsors, but that all happens either pre, because people want to know it's coming. What we do, kind of the ending part, because there's no really PR about it after the fact,
Mm.
except unless it was like, um, unless you're telling like the board this made this much money, or
Mm-hmm.
so that it helps generate money for the next year. The biggest thing that's post is actually what we call set strike. And that's when you tear apart the whole set that you've been practicing on for weeks, that took you weeks to build usually, and paint. So you paint everything and you do it all, you put all this work in, you decorate for what equates to a couple weekends, and then you take it all apart and you
Mm.
take it back to a bare stage, or you start, it's very unusual for a set, once it's built, to be used for the next show, because
Mm.
it's usually another director with another vision, and the story is totally different. So you
Right.
don't usually do that. So that's the biggest thing that we have, is we call it set strike. And it is also a part of, so one of the things that happens during theater productions is, and you'll have it happen sometimes during film too, but because the cast is there together all the time, it builds a camaraderie.
Mm.
And they actually have what's called post-show depression
Yeah,
afterwards,
I know.
because they don't get to see these people that they did it. They put all these emotions into the show every day for however long, during rehearsals, during the production, and then all of a sudden it's done. It's done and it's over. And so disassembling the set sometimes is part of that. It's a part of of just letting it go, putting the costumes back, putting everything back. It's a part of that, and it helps the cast and the crew kind of help them move on to the next show. But you see where there are lifelong friendships. You get showmances out of shows. When my son just married someone who was in a show with me and later in a movie with me, and he actually was an extra in a movie, the same movie she was in, because they were dating at the time. So there's things to
Nice.
happen.
Yeah. I can completely relate to that, especially with film, because film, you just don't have a post show depression, you also have a post edit depression because
Yeah.
because you are with people during your filming, and then after the filming has ended, you are still with them virtually on the edit
Right.
stage for months and months.
Right.
And then once the film is finished and I don't touch the timeline anymore, I was so lonely at that time. Like after that, like I man, I really feel that it takes immense courage to just leave that creation behind and move forward. It's
Yeah, and you
unbelievable.
and you have to, and then it's kind of like you're like, okay, I'm
Yeah,
out, I'm done. But and a lot of times you'll see these people again, especially if it was something that was an emotional, whatever it was, emotional production as far as what it was about.
hmm,
So they tend to build, and if they had fun and it was a comedy, then that gives them the memories too. But there's just so many relationships that are built during that. And even like for film, when you're working with a crew and you see the crew, you may not see the actors every day, but
right.
you'll see your crew every day. So you build that relationship too. And they go on to the next job. And like you said, so they're all gone and you're someplace doing the editing, and then you let it go.
Yeah,
And it's not always easy, and sometimes too you have to worry about I don't have it so much maybe with film, but in stage, when you're doing all of that all the time, and you've done that you get to where you want to make sure you're not burned out. And you know that with film, when you're doing the acting and the directing and the editing and everything, you can get really, really tired. So you have to really watch that burnout and make sure you renew as well.
yeah. And then I have a question about marketing. So, do you use social media at all for your
Yes.
marketing?
Yes, they, in fact, most of them have gone to that. We used to do a lot of posters and newspaper ads and
Hmm.
radio, but the majority of theater marketing for local community theater anyway is social media.
So, do you use any automation or anything like that for social media so that you can keep consistently posting about?
That is totally up to the PR departments or the PR people that do that,
Hmm.
but not so much. I mean, usually you try to do a timeline that maybe you start doing it so many weeks before, but you don't want to overdo it where people go, oh my gosh, if I see another thing on that, I'm not going to go see it. Don't show me anymore. And then there's usually email that goes out to, like, with a newsletter, and then also by asking for volunteers to come and do things at the theater. That also helps, because then people go, oh, I can go see that, or my friend will watch it and I'll be volunteering. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that happens.
Great. So next question is, what is the biggest challenge you face in your creation process? And when I say creation process, think about from the start, when the inspiration hits you, to the set strike that you just mentioned. Like, what is the biggest challenge you face?
What is the biggest challenge? Um, Sometimes it's finding the right cast, but I always feel that you end up with the cast that you're supposed to, even if you lose people. So
Hmm.
that's one of them. And sometimes it is just the biggest challenge I've had lately on my shows is getting everybody there, because the rehearsal process is much more involved, and
Hmm.
and it's longer. It's usually 6 to 8 weeks or longer coming in, depending on if it's a musical or not. Sometimes it's hard to get everybody there when they all have day jobs or they have other stuff to do. That's been my biggest challenge, is having everyone at a rehearsal.
Hmm. And how has digital technology impacted your creation process?
Um, as far as being able to read things, being able to keep track of, like, I'll do a digital calendar. I can tell who everybody's conflicts are, and I mark them on a calendar before I make a calendar, which is also one of my biggest challenges too, is creating a rehearsal calendar, a meaningful one that
Hmm.
I'm going to have people at, and doing your different scenes, and then getting to where we put it together, and then we put it together more to where we're running the whole show.
So is it similar to creating call sheets for
Yes,
movies? Okay.
it's similar, except that I ask everyone for what are your conflicts between this day and this day, and
Hmm.
then you write those all on a calendar. Like, say I'm doing Tuesdays and Thursdays, well, this person can't do and then I look at the scene grid to see what scenes
Right.
they're in, and then I can kind of go from there and say, all right, we're going to do this and this. that probably takes one of the longest times to do. People don't understand how long it takes to create
Yeah.
that
There
rehearsal
are so many
calendar.
constraints that you have to worry about. Like, I mean, not, for film, at least I know that, I mean, there is location constraint, there is
Mhm.
timing constraint, there is cast constraint, there is equipment constraint, so
Right,
much.
exactly.
And then you have to create like this, it becomes like a math problem, like
It does
optimization, optimization
very
problem.
much.
Um,
It very much so is. It's like you're doing this whole spreadsheet in your head or trying to figure out where's this going to go? How am I going to do this? This person's going to be here and I can have this. And then kind of like in film too, when are we going to fit these costumes?
yeah.
So if I do a costume fitting or that can take up the whole time of a rehearsal. And if I'm dealing with 30 people that I have to costume, I will set aside just a day for that. And then
Yeah.
we have days for set builds too. So all of that is done. And set builds very much like a location. So,
Hmm.
except it's not mobile.
Have you done any for your creation process to make it easier on you? Have you created any automations or process improvements or something like that, or any particular tricks that you use?
I haven't created other than the grids that I told you
Yeah.
about. And I have shared those with other people saying, this is how I've done it. And trying to make a calendar that's meaningful or the scene grid, which I share with the cast. And then I've done my own costume manifest and prop manifest. And I've shared that with other people as well. Generally, that's on a table or a spreadsheet, but I haven't created like my own code as far as creating a program for it.
No, not program, but in general, like as I said, like for example, the inspiration thing that we were talking about, right? Like if you kind of tag something, then it's easier for you to
Mm-hmm.
remember it later,
Mm-hmm.
like something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell me quickly about the costume manifest part? I mean, I didn't understand what goes in it.
Okay, so the costume manifest would be like the character's name
Mm,
and maybe the person who's playing it. And then what is it that they need for this scene? Like for this scene, they need a tux, or for this scene, they need casual and this. So I will make a list of what it is that they need and
mm,
also what props they need during that scene so
mm,
that it goes across. So I will make a manifest on that. And that helps me not only find what it is I need for them, but also when I give a costume, then I make sure I get back the costume.
mm.
So I check it off as it comes back and I check the props off as well. That way, if I'm borrowing something, I make sure it gets back to the person that I borrowed it from. And and if it is something that's mine personally, then I check it back in if it's something for the theater. It just helps me track it. And it also helps me costume that person.
So, last question. So, by looking at the tools and technology that's around you right now, what is the vision for your own creations? Do you see yourself creating in some different manner in future?
Um, I would love to find a program that was more like single entry, like I could put it in and then I know it goes to that person, it or something like that. There's a program that I use at work that it's a single entry. We keep track of a lot of different things, assets and how it's owned and all that. It would be nice to have something similar to that I could just enter it, or if there's a way to download it for that particular play
Mm,
and that it's given to you.
mm,
Even if you had to purchase it from the publisher, this is what you have. And then and you'll see that sometimes you'll see that at costume houses where they'll have a suggested thing, but it would be a little bit easier than having all the separate sheets
right.
that I have to have duplicate entries of.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges in like productions like these, even for stage or film, is to maintaining the integrity of information, right? Like you have this information kind of redundant in some places and
Exactly.
unique in some places, but you need like one single database.
It would be nice to have it in one place, especially like
Yeah,
you said, because then if you enter it here and you have to enter it here and you have to enter it
right.
here, anytime you have multiple entries, there's a possibility of making an error.
Exactly. Thanks a lot, Gail, for your time. It was great talking with you.
And nice talking to you too. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you are a creator, I would love to talk with you. Please connect with me through my website or social media. See you in the next episode.